Get ready, everyone, and you just might survive. Ruben and Jason are here with their X-Men deep dive. Going through all the X-books is their mission, so get ready for the Learned Edition. Things are getting weird in here. Ruben hopes another sword book gets announced this year. It's the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow, except your mind. It's the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow, except your mind.
Welcome all you weirdos, alien brain surgeons, and everyone who felt old when they saw that as a kid, Gambit pickpocketed cell phones now. It is time to receive your 142nd Weird Dose of X, the mutant member of your Weird Science podcast family. I am your just off the podium host Jason, broadcasting as always from the Wrong Turn studio, perched high atop stately Weird Science Tower. And joining me is a man who knows the importance of fall protection when working the high steel. It's my pal Ruben. Hey Ruben, how the heck are you today?
Hey, doing all right.
Actually, Oh, great. Thank you, Google.
According to Wikipedia, Johanna Klaus, a German gymnast.
Hey Google, cancel.
Oh, man.
Okay, yeah, I forgot to turn off my speaker, and my speaker thinks that its name is Ruben, so we'll have to see how that happens again. Great start. We certainly haven't restarted this 2 or 3 times. This is absolutely our first take, so we're going to continue. To explain my little just off the podium thing in the intro, Ruben, I think I mentioned somewhere on the Slack that I was competing in the Bay State Games this weekend in the noble sport of curling, representing the noble state of Rhode Island across the border in Massachusetts. So our team did well in the early going. We won our first 2 games, put us into the semifinals, which we lost to a frankly much better team, put us into the bronze medal game, still a chance for a medal, chance to get on the podium, but we lost that too. Oh well. But we had a good time. I played all right. Not great, but all right. I did a whole lot more like sweeping and moving around than usual. Usually I'm the skip, which means I do a lot of standing still and giving hand signals and yelling. So this time I was playing in the front end, which means a lot more racing back and forth and sweeping. So I am quite sore myself. Now, I hear you had an athletic event this weekend as well. Isn't that correct?
I don't know if I'd consider it athletic, but yeah, I was playing pickleball with my pickleball team mates.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know my parents and that generation play a lot of pickleball, so it's got to be very, very physically,
Yes.
physically, it takes a lot out of you, man, I guess. Is that right?
The embarrassing thing is it does.
Well, how about another question, Ruben?
Sure.
Have you read, how many comic books have you been reading lately?
Oh, man.
I hope it's at least 2, because we're going to talk about 2 of them today.
Yeah, I've read 2 of them at least.
Awesome. Great.
I've been reading a lot of Batman again lately. I've been reading Jeff Loeb's Long Halloween, whatever, Final Halloween.
Right.
Whatever that thing is. I didn't even realize it came out. I had put that down as something I had wanted to read at some point.
Yeah, I think I've been seeing the house ads for that in some of the DC books lately. They've been pushing that.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's pretty good.
It's good? Okay.
Yeah,
I'll put that on my list.
It's very different than, the Bat God stories, for better or worse. I mean, I actually enjoy Bat God type stuff, but it's just a different vibe.
He's a character that can be written in a lot of different ways, and that's that's why he stuck around for 70, 80, however many years it is.
Yeah.
Well, we're not here to talk about Batman, Ruben. We're here to talk about 2 X-Men related comic books. And those are X-Manhunt Omega #1, which doesn't need a #1, but that's what Marvel does. And then we're going to talk about Uncanny X-Men #12, when we get a little peek into Gambit's past. There were some other books this week. We're skipping Weapon X-Men, which, by the way, was recently changed from an ongoing to a 5-issue mini. Well, that must not have sold at all. Did you read Laura Kinney Wolverine? I know you were kind of interested in seeing what Bucky was up to.
Yeah, I haven't read either of those 2. I will do that, later. But I was interested in Weapon X-Men too, which is kind of a bummer that that's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that'll have to wrap up pretty quick. Before we get to the books we're actually talking about, though, we're going to, as always, check in on our Marvel Unlimited Infinity comic. So let's do that now. The Infinity comic is Astonishing X-Men number 16, Controlled Demolition Part 4, written by Alex Packnadel, art by Philip Sevi, colors by Michael Bartolo, and letters by Clayton Cowles. Our two strands of the story do start to come together at the very end of this chapter. Assuming the pattern holds, and this is another 6-part story, that leaves Alex Packnadel with 2 more parts to wrap things up before, I'm guessing, probably handing the reins back over to Tim Seeley for the next story. So let's tell the Chicago side of this story first. We've got Angelo, a.k.a. Skin. He's once again working his construction job. He's on the high steel of a building that right now is only a skeleton of girders. And we meet another character, also a mutant. Angelo calls this guy Wing, but Wing prefers to use his real name, which is Eddie. Now, Ruben, do you know who this Eddie Wing character is?
No.
Well, I wouldn't either, except that Google exists. And Eddie actually comes from the early 2000s Joss Whedon run on Astonishing X-Men. Maybe Packnadel picked him out of there because this book's also called Astonishing X-Men, although it's not related. Wing is Edward Tancredi. His deal is, obviously, that he can fly. He's called Wing, but he doesn't actually have wings. He just flies by thinking about it. Like, he looks like Superman, right? He just kind of wants to fly, and so he flies. Edward only appeared in about, I think it was like 5 or 6 issues of Astonishing. His powers were taken away from him, and then he died kind of tragically. But that he was seen as a background character on Krakoa, here he is again. So, Edward, not going to call him Wing, he wants to be Edward. He's here to return Angelo's socket wrench, which he says he found on the 18th floor. Now, Ruben, neither of us have ever worked the high steel as far as I know, but I'm pretty sure you don't want to leave like a heavy steel tool just lying 200 feet above the ground. Seems like something bad could happen there.
I actually think it's even worse than that. I think the insinuation was that he dropped it.
Oh, and it just happened to land?
Somebody.
Wow.
Yeah, that was how I read it.
Yeah, I guess it's either he moved on and left it behind, or he dropped it and there it was. Yeah, you gotta watch out with that stuff. Speaking of things that could kill people, Ruben, remember good old dumb human guy Nick from earlier in this story? Yeah, he was the one who injected himself with Gamma, has now gone full-on Hulk mode. Do like the way that we just see that the building's shaking, and we see Angelo fall off the building, and we scroll down, but still through the same panel to see that Nick, the Hulk, is the cause. Really good use of this scrolling format. We have a lot of panels like this where we see it's technically one panel, but the same characters appear multiple times as you move down the page. I think it's done very well. They're really starting to learn what they can do in this format.
Yeah.
So Angelo's falling, gets saved by Edward, but they get too close to Nick the Hulk. Nick grabs Angelo. At this point, Nick and Angelo recognize each other. So this wasn't Nick setting out specifically to kill Skin. He was just trying to cause trouble at his old job. And yeah, they recognize each other. Nick slips. The two of them go falling towards the ground as Edward flies down towards them. Okay, stop there. Head over to Ireland. Last time we're in Ireland, Paige had disguised herself and popped into a pub for a pint and maybe some gossip. Seems that Paige had a bit more than a pint. Might have gone full Simon, I think is the official term there.
Like, what the fuck is inside that giant egg? Like, what the fuck
That's what Paige was saying, and that's when she got kicked out of the pub because you got to draw a limit somewhere. She ended up, we find out, passed out in a doorway. Not good. Fortunately for her, she was found and taken in by an older woman named, I think it's pronounced Ashlyn. Ashlyn also picked up the scrap of face skin that Paige had shed before passing out, which, oh, gross. You can leave that behind, Ashlyn. We don't need that.
Yeah.
My kid, at one point when she was little, she had won a raffle at school and got to take the classroom crayfish home. Hooray. I don't think any other kids' parents let them enter. I think that's how we won. But we had this crayfish for a long time, years. And the crayfish would shed its skin, and then it would eat the skin that it had shed. So I wonder if that's what Paige does off panel. That's my headcanon. That's how she, retains nutrients and things. Yeah. Okay. So Paige is embarrassed by all this, heads back to Cassidy Keep. And she's already there at Cassidy Keep. Cassidy Keep, that's where he lives. He notices that Paige didn't return the night before, but doesn't seem very worried about her. Banshee is then scolded by a leprechaun. That's got to be humiliating. Little tiny 1.5 foot tall guy tells you you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
This is Owen, who we met in the first chapter of this story. I think he's been here before. He says that all the other leprechauns have already left for Otherworld. I don't think I knew that leprechauns are native to Otherworlds. Did we know that? Yeah. Is it established?
I mean, I don't want to pretend that I'm like the expert on Otherworlds.
Marvel leprechauns? Yeah.
But no, I had never heard of that. Yeah.
It seems the kind of creature that would be connected to Otherworlds. I'm fine with that. He says that because the other leprechauns saw like dark clouds coming, things not going well here. Now, bad stuff has happened here before, so that this is so bad that the leprechauns leave. That seems worse than what we've seen on panel, right? We've seen some anti-mutant human sympathies going on, but nothing all that bad. I wonder what's really going on here. Now, Owen, the last remaining leprechaun, he tells Banshee there's a friend here to see him. Banshee heads out and sees that it is Gateway, the taciturn Australian portal maker.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, Paige shows up at the very same time. Gateway doesn't say anything, he just makes a portal.
Such a weird dude.
He is, and he's really kind of, again, what I want, Ruben, is I want a Gateway solo miniseries, right? I think that could be fun because when we see him on panel, he's not really a character. He's just a plot device to get other characters where they need to be. That's what he was in the first arc of this series. Yeah, he's just there. Go ahead.
Some of these series do those like silent issues, right? If they ever need a silent issue protagonist, they've got Gateway.
We know that Declan Shalvey likes to do weird stuff, right? He wanted to do that Mystique series and not actually have anyone drawn as Mystique herself the whole series.
Yeah.
I think he could do a 5-issue completely silent Gateway miniseries. I would buy that. Maybe me and 4 other people, but I would buy it. Okay, so Gateway makes a portal.
Give the people what they want, right?
Yeah, the people meaning me and 4 other weird comic dudes. That portal is to Chicago. It's right to that construction site in Chicago where the rest of the plot is happening. Any guesses, Ruben, how the hell he even knows to make the portal here? How does Gateway know any of this stuff?
I don't know. It's Gateway. Gateway be doing Gateway things.
I guess. Maybe that's the miniseries. It's all the stuff that happens in between his appearances on panel.
Yeah.
Maybe he has like a really normal job and he dresses like a normal Western suburban husband in between. Maybe he talks plenty off panel, right? Maybe it's one of those things where like somebody has a secret family the other one doesn't know about. He has his whole secret, completely mundane suburban life. Every once in a while, he gets a pager, tells him to go and make a portal somewhere. I think we got to pitch this, Ruben. I think this is we got to do this. Let's get a artist on board. Okay, so Paige and Banshee go through the portal. They see Angelo, barely conscious, lying in a heap of rubble. We don't see Nick the Hulk. We don't see Eddie the flying wing guy. We just see Angelo, and that's where we ended.
Yeah.
So, Ruben, what did you think of this chapter here while I have a little tea break?
That was all right. It's kind of a filler issue. I kind of laugh when I see Gateway whenever he pops up. Because he's such just a trope, right? He feels to me like such an underdeveloped character.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's sort of like you get what you want. Maybe it's almost like a running gag.
Yeah, maybe.
At least in my head. But
if they lampshaded it a little bit more, have some of the characters comment on, "Hey, you always seem to just pop up when we need you," then I'd buy it more as an intentional joke.
Yeah, I did laugh at the number of times that Skin fell out of the high-rise. He fell like first the structure got, the building he's working on got shooken by, I guess, the Hulk guy,
Nick
and
the Hulk,
he falls out. Yeah, and then later he's fallen again. I was like, okay, dude, maybe hold on to the with your stretchy arms. But
I think the second time Eddie flying got too close to Nick the Hulk, and Nick just kind of grabbed him or smacked him out of Eddie's hands. That's how I read it. Again, we're getting, this is one of those long panels with multiple images in it, so we don't see what happened in between, but that's what my brain filled in.
Yeah.
I don't think we needed that bit with Paige waking up on Ashland's couch.
No.
I don't know what that added. That felt like, I've got some, whatever the equivalent of page space is, and the comic to fill, and I don't know. Are we going to see we've had a lot of people with drinking problems in the past months, year or so, right? We
That's what the
had
X-Men have
Sage
these
just
days.
deleted it from her brain.
Yeah.
We have what's her name over in the West Coast Avengers, who's going to rehab.
Yeah.
Firestar, Firestar. That, you know who I mean. I'm never going to get that right. And now we have Paige having some, I don't know. She had one, overserved day at the pub. I'm not saying that's a drinking problem, but, we show that on panel. That's telling us something. I did think it was kind of fun to see
them.
Go ahead.
Intervention special.
Intervention special. All these characters come together. That'll be the new team, right? It's the support group, all-star team.
Yeah.
Helping each other out, making sure nobody falls into bad ways. Again, I don't think we can make that the same book as Gateway. Maybe we have a little crossover, like the way Sentinels crossed over with Mystique.
Yeah.
We'll work on this offline. I think we got something. It was fun seeing an old Joss Whedon character pop up. Not going to claim that he was, my favorite character ever, but I like to see the continuity maintained, and so that's good. This was one of those in-between chapters, the middle chapter of a story kind of a thing, where they kind of move some pieces into place, and we see now that in the next 2 chapters we don't know why exactly Banshee and Paige have to be there to be the ones to save Skin. We did see the phone call earlier between Angelo and Paige, so there's a connection. We kind of see where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we'll get any more information about that. Is it the Flat Scanners? Is that the group that gave Nick the Hulk his gamma?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get some more information about their organization. That could be worthwhile. All right, that's the Infinity comic. Let's go on now to our non-Infinity comic, the first of which is X-Manhunt Omega #1, Legacy #1. It doesn't say that on the cover, but I'm calling it. It's Legacy #1. This is X-Manhunt Part 7 of 7, also known as X-Manhunt Finale, Dream's End. It is written by Merwewa Ayodele and Gail Simone, the writers of Storm and Uncanny, respectively. Art by Gleb Melnikov, Federica Manchin, and Enid Balam, who are not the artists on any of the current X books, which I think that's kind of a bummer because the art doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look like now. It doesn't look like the current X books, what's going on. It doesn't look super relevant. So just the visual appeal of it makes me want to think this book is less important, less connected to the storyline than it should be. So no offense to those particular artists, but why not? I know the other artists are busy doing their own books, but I think that was one reason why I was kind of emotionally distant from this book. The colors are by Brian Reber, letters by Travis Lanham. So, Ruben, we may as well start with conclusion. Cut to the chase, spoiler warning. So if you thought you were going to cut out halfway and not hear the ending, here comes the ending. Ruben, it turns out that this entire event was really just a reason to get Lalandra resurrected and to get her and Chuck off of Earth and into space. Because the one page of this book that matters is the final page of the comic, which is a house ad. This house ad reads, "Follow Professor X and Lalandra's journey in Imperial. Jonathan Hickman, Iban Coelho, Federico Vincentini, coming in June." Which means, hey, Ruben, you were right. Now, you sounded very confident that you knew that this is where Charles and Lalandra were headed. So take a victory lap. Tell us why you were so certain of this, because you were correct.
Yeah, so I just assumed that the Kree Skrull is kind of a boring status quo at this point, and so you're going to have to break them up. I'm assuming they'll end up being 2 separate spacefaring societies again.
And then Emperor Hulkling no longer going to be the Messiah kind of figure.
Yeah, I think that wasn't really going anywhere. And then Lalandra's back, right? So I would assume that she takes back over the Shi'ar.
Could be. Everything in Marvel kind of goes in cycles, and this would be time to go back to the Airman Below. Jonathan Hickman doesn't usually put things back to where they were. He usually gives things like a kick. So I am curious to see what he does.
Maybe maybe Lalandra's going to be in charge of the Kree Skrull.
Sure, why not just trade it? And Hulkling runs the Shi'ar.
Kree Skrull Shi'ar.
Yes, you're right, though, that we got those very brief scenes at the very beginning of what's going on in Shi'ar space and Shi'ar world, and we haven't seen anything at all since then, and all that's, clearly being saved for Hickman to do what he wants to do.
Yeah. I did not buy for a second this whole idea of this issue being a farewell to Charles Xavier. He's never going to be on Earth again. So that kind of irks me. I was like, this is way overselling it. Like, this is going to last, I'm going to guess, a year.
They do sell that
and he will be
really,
back.
really hard at the end when we get to that scene. Yeah, we are supposed to think that he's just done. He's gone. He's never going to be back on Earth again. But, next time there's a new editorial reboot, if these books stop selling well, and I hear they're not selling all that great right now, so maybe that reboot could come at some point. Clearly, when you need a kick, Professor X will be back on Earth. But after I got home from curling yesterday, I did click on over to Tom Brevoort's Sunday blog to see what he had to say for himself. A reader named Andrew, he posted a comment mentioning, it hasn't been all that long since the raid on Greymalkin event, kind of close for events to happen. And the response from Tom Brevoort was, honestly, Andrew, I would have liked to have had more space between Raid on Greymalkin and X-Manhunt as well. But there was a story reason why X-Manhunt needed to happen when it happened. And then, as sometimes also happens, that story need changed. But only after we were committed to doing X-Manhunt when it was. So everything's all mixed up there. Something's coming and going. Don't know if this is Hickman and Imperial having their production schedules slide around. So I don't see anything in the X world that would necessitate having, this story happen right now as opposed to a few months from now. But yeah, clearly things weren't happening according to some grand plan. Like I'm sure that this was not the plan for Charles Xavier when From the Ashes kicked off, right? This was when they put him in prison there in Greymalkin. I don't think they expected to bust him out of prison to get into a ship and fly to Shi'ar space. I think this is making it up as they go along, which is fine, but it feels very, very seat of the pants.
Yeah.
Okay, enough waffling big picture. Time for the issue itself. We open with a flashback to a meeting at Haven House in Louisiana, and this occurs at some vague time after Raid on Greymalkin, but before Professor X freaked out and Kool-Aid manned himself out of prison. We have Rogue and Gambit representing the home team, and Cyclops and Magic representing the away team. And they seem to be getting along pretty well, having some coffee together. And they're talking about Professor X, and naturally their positions are just what they were in that prior event. Rogue wants to bust the professor out of prison. Scott wants to let him rot there. And I think Scott's argument is, I don't know if it's the correct one, but it's the more interesting one. He says that with the big dream of Krakoa now dead, that still leaves room for many smaller mutant dreams to blossom. And here the writers try to tie in all the other books, not super convincingly. We're told that NYX, that represents, quote, the dream of self-expression. Does it? I don't know.
No, it does not.
X Factor, though, Ruben. X Factor represents the dream to change the world and how it thinks of us. I thought they were just government dupes. I guess I was looking too shallow.
Exactly.
X Factor represents the dream of sprawling heroism and adventure. Not for Surge, it doesn't. She's still dead.
I feel like a jerk because I was like, I guess I don't like any of those things.
Well, that's super. I mean, that could be any X-Men book, any superhero book ever is all about heroism and adventure. So not really tightly connected to X Factor. Yeah. Plus, Ruben, just not to nitpick too much, but they show an image here of when the team was fighting the Marianas Trench. They show Sage in the panel, but she wasn't on the team at the time. That's a nitpick. I admit it, but there you go. Finally, we're told that the exceptional X-Men represent the dream to keep hope alive. Well, yeah, again, they're trying to show that this ties everything together. Doesn't really work for me. But the idea is that even with all the hate and fear around, keeping Xavier in prison is kind of like the price to pay to maintain this fragile, détente between mutants and human governments. That's Cyclops' position. Rogue doesn't buy it. She doesn't think that mutants are really in that much danger, even if the government gets mad at them again, so she's fine with busting and grabbing Charles, but meeting breaks up without coming to an agreement. Okay, back to present day in the X-Manhunt story. We zoom out west to check in with Storm, who is still floating above San Francisco in her Fortress of Stormitude, and Sage is in there with her. Now, Ruben, when and how do you think that this happened? Because they hadn't met each other at all prior to this panel, at least, on panel. What do you think happened here? How do they get together?
Oh, man. I guess Xavier told both of them to meet up at the same place. I mean, they did have...
He did contact Sage. We saw that. Maybe he told Storm he was contacting Sage?
Yeah, that's the best I've
Now,
got.
why is Storm so pro-Charles? We saw on panel that he told her he was going to resurrect someone. Do you think he told her, by the way, the person I'm resurrecting is my Shi'ar wife? Because I don't think Storm would be all that excited about some dead Shi'ar chick. Why would that motivate her? Why would that move the needle? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they have a pre-existing relationship. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
that much about Lilandra, but I don't know. Here's an angle.
Give me.
The angle that I really want to play out, which we've kind of gotten away from, is Storm being, Empress of Mars.
Okay.
And
so
maybe she's more invested in. Yeah, well, maybe she's more invested in what's good for space communities.
Okay, I'd like that.
She's like, oh, this is going to be good for Arakko if we have some input into getting the Shi'ar Empress back.
I think that's a great angle. Now, we haven't seen anything about Mars in the current Storm book, though.
Yeah, they've kind of just let it go, which is annoying me.
Yeah, they're really playing into the weather goddess and now eternity side of things. So yeah, that would be nice.
Because I don't mind the idea of getting rid of her being Empress of Mars because it's kind of a goofball thing. But don't just hand wave.
Don't just pretend it never happened. It should be important.
Yeah,
we should get a peek at, because Arakko is still around. There still should be tons of mutants up there, and we haven't really got much of a peek. Oh, there was one in an Elseworlds kind of a thing. What was a Hickman? Was it the Alien or Predator crossover? I think it was the Alien crossover that Hickman was doing. That showed Arakko. And again, not the 616 Arakko, but that's the only glimpse we've had of Mars in a long, long time, which clearly Tom Brevoort and his side of things just seem to want to forget that is even in existence.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, more back to Storm. We learned something new and, I guess, important about her flying fortress. We learned in the tie-in issue of Storm that she had one dead robot alien kaiju thing as an engine. Now we learn that she has 5 of the damn things. We gotta find out sometime where this all came from, I've said this 1,000 times before, I don't know 1,000, but at least a dozen times before. Where does her fortress come from? Now that we know it's powered by 5 of these things, there's got to be a story. Yeah. I mean, there must be a story because we know another one of these aliens was powering that power plant in Storm issue number 1. So we got to get back to that. I did like the dialogue where Storm is super sarcastic and says, "Hey, Sage, why don't you take my entire sanctuary?" And then Sage acts like she's completely ignoring the sarcasm. "Oh, yeah, I could do that." So 2 possibilities. Either Sage deleted her sarcasm detector when she deleted her alcoholism. Maybe they're on the same gene. I don't know. But I prefer to think that Sage completely gets the sarcasm, but is just sending double reverse sarcasm back at Storm. I think that's the better read. During the scene, we also get a quick flashback to the moment when Charles used his mind control to blow up everyone on that ship called the Agnew. Very pivotal scene. I went back and reread that original scene again in Jerry Duggan's Fall of the House of X number 4. And there is just no possibility in the entire world that Duggan intended these guys to be just artificial automatons created by Xavier. No way.
Yeah.
I mean, you actually see it happen, and one of the people on board has a look on his face of absolute terror as the hand goes towards the self-destruct button. There's no reason for Charles to make his puppets look like they're pissing themselves, right? They wouldn't do that. So that was a retcon, and that retcon happened even before the end of the Krakoan era. That happened, I guess it was after the end of the Krakoan era. It was in an Infinity comic, yeah. In the From the Ashes Infinity comic, issue 2 or 3 of the Infinity comic, where they made the thing where they said, "Oh, he's got these Arthurian names that are hinting they're not real." But that was a Tom Brevoort thing to try to undo Charles actually being a mass murderer.
Yeah. My headcanon is that's just what he's telling himself, but he actually
I don't think Charles has to tell himself, and I think Charles could very much just be lying about that to everybody. He knows he killed real people, but okay. Now we go to Iceland. Why Iceland? I still don't know, Ruben. I think I sent you a DM about this. Have you figured out how the hell they got to Iceland?
No, or why?
Because at the end of X-Force, when Sage gave the happy couple a small ship to make their getaway, they were still in Mexico. They were still in that Mad Thinker's toy box lair, and that's where they were. Now, we see in this Omega issue, there is a team going to Mexico City, right? Kid Omega, plus Pyro and Cecilia Reyes from X Factor for some reason. That team comes up empty. All the action here is in Iceland. And here in Iceland, a ship rises into the sky. Is Charles on the ship? Maybe. Cyclops and Magic are here, and they perform a variation on the fastball special that Scott calls the CR-20 maneuver. I could not find an explanation for what that name might mean. When I Googled it, I find out there's a Star Wars vehicle called CR-20, but, there's a million of those. That could be a coincidence.
Yeah.
Anyway, what it is Magic pulls out a sword that's even larger than her usually stupidly large sword. She jumps on the big sword like a surfboard. Cyclops hits it with an eye blast, shoots her up towards the rising ship. Because they have to get her there fast, Ruben. There's no other way that Magic, the teleporter, could get to the... Oh, hey, wait. Why doesn't she just teleport there? She teleports Scott there later. This is just an excuse for Iodelli to give another one of his Iron Fist-style kung fu move names. Calls this one the Red Surfer, which I'm not going to Google that, because that has got to be on Urban Dictionary as something just heinous. No Googles from me. And there's a bunch more.
I'm assuming.
What? Yeah, I'm still annoyed by this.
I'll try to give you a zero sum on this. I mean, maybe this creates infinite force with her sword, which then allows her to damage the thrusters. But then I guess she could do the same thing by just creating a bunch of portals and cycling through them, right?
When what do you think of the general concept of all these kung fu move type names that Iodelli likes to use? Because he's going to keep doing it. I've read an interview by him, and he thinks this is the bee's knees. He's gonna no one until somebody tells him to stop. He's gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, I don't mind the idea of the X-Men, who are especially Scott's team, who are like very well trained and have kind of maneuvers to pull off.
Okay,
so I'm okay with that. But to your point is, I like Magic as a character, but I was like, how do you balance on that, right? Even if you're a good surfer, you'd have to be like world class, right, to ride that, and then at that speed. I mean, this feels more like what was that? Fall of Powers of X?
We had Rise of the Powers of X, Fall of the House of X.
Okay, so Fall of the House of X.
That was the Jerry Duggan one.
Where it was like a little just sort of like campy. I don't need more of that. I really don't.
Yeah, there's some characters that can handle a little campiness, little kung fu silliness, and I take your idea that if this is a move they practiced, but again, Scott has a name for the move. The name of the move is the CR-20. It's not called the Red Surfer, so that doesn't even hang together. But anyway, Magic's flying through the air, surfing on her giant sword, approaches this ship, and remember, Ruben, this ship may contain Charles Xavier and his wife, although they probably don't know about his wife now. And I guess maybe taking your idea that because of the force of the sword moving so fast, when Magic slashes at this spaceship with her sword, destroys the entire thing. Huge explosion. Anyone on board would be very, very dead, right? I mean, is that Scott's plan? Yes. Is that to keep Xavier from escaping Earth, he's going to murder him to death? But luckily, just a decoy. Magic falls hundreds of feet out of the sky. Scott says, "Wake up, soldier," and a kaiju appears. Not just any kaiju, Ruben. Noshim Ash, the demon kaiju. That's its official name. They summoned a demon kaiju. No foreshadowing, no setup, just out of nowhere.
Is this from somewhere in the past?
The name, I Googled the name. This is the first time that name has ever existed as far as I can tell. Yeah. So there's no continuity reason for this to happen. There's just going to be another kaiju later, and you can't have one kaiju, Ruben. You got to have two so they can box each other. That's the way it works.
Yeah, this is way too campy.
We're supposed the emotions are just, we're setting up to have these very deep emotions for characters, but then other scenes just undercut it. Also now we get panels of Lilandra performing brain surgery on her husband, which is how that pesky tumor is just removed from continuity. She does this while the two of them are taking off in a spaceship and are actively under attack. I mean,
that's some good hydraulics.
My wife loves those medical procedurals, all the soap opera type ones. I really can't complain about liking soap opera stuff because we're talking about X-Men comics here. But I think even those shows would say, are you flying and doing brain surgery? Not that realistic.
I imagine there's a little bit of turbulence leaving the atmosphere.
She is a Shi'ar. They're supposed to be really good at stuff, but very silly.
Yeah.
It does bug me. We're never shown like an image of, oh, look, here's the tumor. Here's me removing it. We see his brain exposed, but we don't see the tumor. I think if the point is the tumor's gone now, we should see it.
I also thought that was supposed to be like a big point, wasn't it? I mean, that was what I was gathering.
This was
like,
not the plan for the tumor. This was a change much later. I can't imagine this was it. Because, boy, real shame that Landra wasn't available to operate on poor Harvey X, right? That dead kid. Shame she's not going to stick around to treat scurvy or Prisoner X or any of the other avians who have the same horrible tumor that she can cure in, snap of fingers.
Yeah.
So now we're also told that the happy couple is on a real Shi'ar ship, not what it said in X-Force. In X-Force, she had an Earthbound ship that resembled a Shi'ar scout skiff, but now they're in the real thing, so they can go all the way into space. Never explained. Kaiju fight time. That engine that Sage got from Storm is now, I guess it's more like a mecha, because a mecha has a pilot, and the pilot is John Wraith, who teleports the thing in. Dumb kaiju fight, not worth talking about. It happens. But before they can really escape, Cyclops remembers that magic is a teleporter. He has her teleport him onto the second ship's outer hull, and Charles, who, remember, is in the middle of having his brain operated on, he sends his astral projection out to chat with his former student. Lots of blah, blah, blah. Charles reiterates that the Agnew crew were all fakes, paints himself as the victim, saying, oh, I lost everything trying to save everyone. I'm not going to lose my daughter, too. Cyclops all set to make Xavier kill him by zooming the ship into space. But, Ruben, I can't even describe this next bit, because this next bit is even dumber than a kaiju fight. You're going to have to say it, Ruben. How is Scott removed from the hull of this Shi'ar ship?
Oh, I didn't even remember that part, man. You got to tell me.
It was Storm, Ruben.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
In Atlanta.
Like a nation away. And
2,000 miles, Ruben. I looked it up. 2,000 miles.
Yeah. You know what? This part I'm not so annoyed about.
Okay, make the case. I'll try.
Okay.
I'm feeling very cynical, Ruben. Tell me what's not so bad about this.
Anytime Storm does something dumb right now, we can just say it's Eternity.
Her eyes are white, which has, in past recent issues, like glowing bluish white, has been indication that Eternity's kind of running things. But why would Eternity care about Charles, Xavier, and Cyclops?
That part is pretty dumb. I don't have an answer for you there.
So Eternity Storm grabs a lightning bolt, makes it into a lightning bow and arrow, shoots the arrow, and the words here say, sniping Sagittarius. This arrow flies 2,000 miles. I thought they were, I don't know how many, more than that, because she's going from Atlanta to Iceland. So how many thousand miles that is, and shoots Cyclops off of the hull of the ship. There we go. He's going to fall and die, but unbeknownst to Storm, some other people show up, including Rogue, comes in through a portal, catches Scott, flies him safely to the ground. So we should be done now, Ruben, right? The happy couple can fly off into space, save their daughter, no one can stop them, but somehow we've got like 15 pages still to go. The Alaska X-Men are here. They're in their own ship, the Marauder. Even Kid Omega, who last we saw was in Mexico. They shoot temper at the other ship. She misses because John Wraith teleports a ship out of the way. The Xaviers go to space. And meanwhile, on the beach, now is the moment. We've kind of been waiting for this to happen. Now is when Scott's PTSD, anxiety, panic attack situation kicks back in again.
Yeah.
He freaks the freak out, fires optic blasts in every direction, gonna kill everybody. Wolverine, who is, has chunks of his body removed by all these blasts, he gets close enough to Scott to jab those claws clear through Scott's midsection. All the way through. We see multiple inches of all three claws out his back.
Yes.
So bad news for Scott, right? He's going to need emergency surgery, probably lose a kidney if he survives. But we jump 10 hours into the future on board the Shi'ar ship with the Xaviers post-surgery. And Charles, what is Charles's next big decision now that he's free and clear, he's in space, nobody can stop him?
The return to Earth.
He's got to go back. He's like, oh, I got my umbrella. I forgot my car keys. Oh,
Yeah.
forgot my glasses.
Well,
got to go back.
I was okay with this part a little bit because he thinks of Scott as his son, right? He always has. It's the first X-Men he recruited, and they have like a father-son relationship. So he left on really bad terms, right? He left with Scott like screaming,
Yeah.
you can't leave. And
he left with
presumably
Scott
he saw
falling
out
to
of
his
the back.
death is how he left, as far as they know.
Yeah, I guess that's right. He didn't even know if he survived. I'm sure he's like, it's the X-Men. That wasn't a big deal. But yeah, I think he was like, I got to make good with Scott, right?
I guess, but all this work to get to space, everything was leading up to this moment, right? Everything was about getting him, his wife resurrected into space to go head towards the daughter and then say, well, maybe we
Once
need to
you
go
make
back.
it's no takesy backsies.
Is that X-Men rules?
So if he comes back and he's like, I already made it, so you can't put me back in prison.
Okay, yeah. They head back to Earth, back to Iceland, and now it's very much like a happy farewell kind of scene, a little party, little send away, little trying to make us believe that Xavier is really leaving for good.
Mm-hmm.
We get a lot of people come back for this party. We get Storm, Kitty, Magneto, Rogue and Gambit, Angel, Magic, Emma, Forge, Wolverine, and Cyclops. I wonder when this is for Forge, right? Compared with what's going on in X, because it's after that most recent issue of X-Force. We'll have to see what happens in the next issue of X-Force to see when this makes sense.
Are you going to get to the part where I'm just like, this is some bullshit?
Oh, where Cyclops is completely fine? That bit?
No, not even that. Just like the people that show up.
Yeah, it's.
Did you see Miss
Kamala
Marvel?
Khan, yeah.
Yes, fucking Kamala Khan. He's like, I got to bring the people that are really important to me. I'm like, I don't think you have a relationship with Kamala Khan.
I mean, you're important to her because you're the one who brought her back from the dead, but she shouldn't be that important to you.
No, exactly.
But yeah.
That's why Scott doesn't like her. He's like...
The bit with Scott, though, he does say to Wolverine that the wound...
Yeah, just a few
inches. It says wasn't deep. Scott, it was all the way through. You don't get deeper than all the way. It's geometrically impossible to be deeper than that. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Ms. Marvel. No Beast, original 5. No Bobby Drake, original 5. But Ms. Marvel, because Marvel's pushing her as the big mutant character.
Super important. I mean, there's so many. No Kitty. Well, it's Kitty there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot of people more important.
There are other people that you would think. Yes. I think Hank is a big omission. That is kind of a slap.
Because they've rejiggered him, but even the old Beast would have a really big connection. Now they really leave. Oh, first, Xavier recommends that everyone try the soup. It's really made a big deal that the soup here in Iceland is super good, important, and I get the idea.
That part is true. So I got engaged in Iceland, and
wow, must have been good soup. In my mind, it was the waitress. The soup is so good that. No.
Yeah. No, in Reykjavik, they have like this really awesome like lobster bisque type stuff. Their seafood is surprisingly tasty.
Okay, I'm sure it is.
I endorse that.
I get the point is the whole, enjoy every moment, savor the good times is the big picture thing, but weird. And then the issue actually ends, and we get that house ad saying, hey, everybody, buy Imperial if you want to know what's really happening in Shi'ar space. Yeah. Well, Ruben, that's the big grand finale to all of X-Manhunt, and I thought this issue kind of stunk. I was very disappointed because that Jeff Thorne issue of X-Force had really got me back on board. This could be really cool. But this issue, the continuity is nonsense. Characterization is nonsense. Big, flashy stuff happens with no reason and no effect. And Professor X, who was kind of the character I was most interested in heading into this era, right? He's in prison. He's gone through all this. He has these conflicting emotions. Now he's not going to be in X-Men comics again ever, Ruben. He's done. He's gone.
I can't believe they got rid of him.
Never see him again. He's all Jonathan Hickman's now. He's gonna maybe we'll see him pop up in Phoenix in cosmic stuff, but yeah, nobody believes that Tom Brevoort. We should start a pool on the next time that Charles Xavier is back on Earth. And what do you think? A year? Maybe outside a year. Maybe let's set the over under on a year. Right? Well, more depending on what book we're talking about, because the flagship titles are getting 15 to 18 issues a year.
Yeah.
art stuff, I'm not going to complain about the art. It's fine. I just wish it was one of the regular current artists. Ryan Stegman, David Marquez, Lucas Wernick, Marcus Toe, some of these artists whose, when I think of the current X-Men world, I think of their art. It was just a bummer to have it be other people. But yeah, the whole event feels misbegotten, rudderless, like no one's appeared to be looking over the whole thing, making sure it hung together, which does not make me all that optimistic about the immediate future of this line. We like to look on the bright side, find
really
good things,
these.
but I'm feeling down. Make me feel better, Ruben.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that. I really hate these sort of over the top, like too campy storytelling techniques.
I get it, but the
need,
emotion
like,
undercuts the emotion.
Like, super realistic, but yeah, it just feels. I don't know what it feels like.
Maybe it was the two authors working at cross purposes because we had Iodele and Gail Simone. Maybe he was doing the big campy stuff and she was doing the emotional stuff, and maybe that's why it felt at odds with itself. I guess that's just me making stuff up. I mean, just in the line in general, our two favorite miniseries are both done. We have 3 flagship ongoings, and they have their ups and their downs. Some are pretty good, some are pretty bad. There's no real big thrust saying, "Oh, I gotta see what happens with this plot." It's all just kind of, well, yeah, that was an X-Men comic. Like if you were talking to someone who dropped off of X-Men comics a few years ago, and they asked you, "Oh, hey, Ruben, I know you read these books. Just tell me in broad terms what's going on in the X-Men world these days." What would you even say? Because there's no real common thread. It's just like a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah. I'm still waiting to see what happens with K2 or K4, whatever.
K3. 3K.
K3.
3K.
Yeah, 3K. There we go. Well, I guess it's not a great indicator when I don't even know what the hell the villains are called. But
yeah, I mean, it could be. But again, they've just been behind the scenes, and we're hoping they turn out to be cool, but we don't know. Well, Ruben, you and I, this is the job we've chosen. This is our hobby. We do this for fun, actually.
What about the Avians? That's
but
interesting,
that got all
right?
screwed up by having Charles be yanked away to space. Right? Clearly, that was a Charles Xavier-centric plot thread.
Yeah, and Charles was dying.
And he was dying.
And now the other Avians are going to die. Too bad they
right.
don't have
that was
a
Gail Simone thing. That was a Gail Simone thing. So she's going to have to either drop that plot thread entirely or try to rework it without Charles involved.
When they drop it, is it just going to be like
they just don't mention
they all died?
Oh, my God.
They all just died. Those are real formidable villains.
We'll get an email from Lalandra saying, "Oh, here's how to do the surgery. Boom, boom, boom. Everybody's fixed. Never mention it again." It could really be that. We'll keep reading these books. We'll keep trying to find the good bits, Ruben, you and I, among the mediocre stuff. But boy, I know we're not going to get another Krakoan era anytime soon where a strong, writer, strong creative just takes the whole thing and changes it and gives it that narrative thrust. But boy, you could really use somebody with an original idea to really light up my enthusiasm and make me say, "Wow, I gotta see what happens next." But I don't see that happening anytime so soon. So, Ruben, just to wrap this up, I'm going to give X-Manhunt Omega a 4.5 out of 10. Some splashy events, splashy colors, but I did not care for it. How about you, my friend?
I didn't like it either. I think that's a fair score. I was just going to go 4, but
I'm optimistic. Yeah. I'm the positive Peter at 4.5. That can't be good.
Yes.
Well, we will leave it there, folks. And if there's stuff we missed in this issue that you think makes it better than we said, as always, please write in the Slack and the email, because we're looking for reasons to be enthusiastic and haven't found much here. But the other issue we're going to talk about today is better, for sure. And that issue is Uncanny X-Men number 12, Legacy number 712, Some Kind of Way, written by Gail Simone, art by Gavin Guidry. Now, that's the first time Gavin Guidry's name has popped up on this podcast. He's done some DC stuff. He's done some Marvel stuff. He was on Birds of Prey for a while at DC, some of the Superman 78 stuff. And it turns out he is from New Orleans, which probably how he got picked for this particular issue, which takes place in New Orleans. Colors are by Matthew Wilson. Letters are by Clayton Cowles. So this issue is mostly a Gambit backstory one-shot. Does have some hooks into current goings-on in Uncanny. So, if you'll remember, right before X-Manhunt, we had this 2-issue arc of Uncanny about the kids and the cyber dogs at the mall, and at the very end of that story, we get a scene of Rogue and Gambit out on the town, and a last panel reveal that Gambit was being stalked by somebody with a reptile-looking arm. That's what pays off here. We begin at Haven House, current day. Rogue wakes up early, and I guess she was having nightmares about regretting her prior actions, because she says, "Oh, I got to talk to Jitter right now." Because last issue, she thought the kids weren't taking the danger room seriously enough, so she had her husband blow one of them up slightly. She feels bad about that, so she is going to go outside and talk to them. Jitter is already taking this lesson to heart and is exercising her little heart out on that fort that Wolverine built for her, for all of them, on the Haven House grounds. And the other outliers are out there cheering her on. So anyway, Rogue runs out to apologize. We find out that Gambit has already apologized. Death Dream wants to learn how to box. Don't know that'll help him all that much, but, they're all enthusiastic. They want to grow up and be big, strong X-Men. Mm-hmm. Time for the scene to be over, so Marcus St. Jr.'s, the owner of the place, calls everybody in for breakfast and notes that Rogue is once again running around without pants. She does this a lot, starting to be a problem, really. Someone should have a talk with her. Marcus St. Jr. is they talk about self-insert characters. Marcus St. Jr. is my self-insert character because he's the only one with any sense in this book. Before Gambit heads in, he finds a note in his pocket. It's signed just with the letter V. It addresses Gambit as Shawi, which, again, Mr. Google tells me is a Cajun word for raccoon, coming from a Native American word. And the body of the note tells him, "Your bill has come due. Pay what you owe." Flashback time. Now, Ruben, are you well-versed in Gambit's particular backstory? I know he was mysterious for a long, long time, but he's had his backstory.
Yeah, I think I have that first issue, first appearance of Gambit. At least I hope I do. It's worth some money.
Cool.
Because I was reading around that time, and I do remember he was like a Cajun thief early on. I was very heavily influenced that he was a criminal.
I think his exact background was mysterious for a long time, but it has been filled in. This is occurring at a time during his childhood when he had been adopted by Jean-Luc, not Picard, Jean-Luc Lebeau, who was a major player in the Louisiana Thieves Guild.
Stork was almost excited.
Almost excited. Jean-Luc Lebeau. Oh. Young Gambit being messed with by some bullies. Kids whose parents are all part of the Assassins Guild. A lot of guilds there in New Orleans, I guess. All guild-based. Gambit
I believe it. Have you been to New Orleans? That place
I've never
is really
been,
sus.
But what other guilds are there? There must be the Alcohol Guild, the Beads and Breasts Guild. I hear that's a big thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And the Cleaning Up the Vomit Guild. I think those are the major businesses there in New Orleans, as far as I can tell from the internet. So Gambit's getting beat up here. His dad has said, "Do not fight back against Assassin's Guild kids." He listens to his dad. He just taunts them verbally, gets his butt whooped, and we find out later uses the opportunity to pickpocket a bunch of stuff from all these kids, including 2 early 2000s era flip phones. And Ruben, that made me feel old. That in a flashback long, long time ago when our grown-up characters are kids,
ancient history,
they had flip phones. I know the Marvel sliding timeline is a thing, but come on, Gail Simone, make it less obvious just how old I am. After the butt whooping happens, Gambit is found by a guy who goes by the name The Vig. So there's our V from the note. And The Vig looks like a classier version of Killer Croc, right? He's tall, reptile skin, big pointy teeth, not the long crocodile head Killer Croc, the one who has a human-shaped head. The Vig wears a fancy white suit, and he calls Gambit Shawi. Maybe because Gambit's eyes are kind of weird, like a raccoon's mask. I don't know. The Vig works for Gambit's dad as an enforcer, and the Vig says, "Hey, don't worry about your dad. He's away for a little bit. Let's not let these bullies get away with it." So the Vig takes Gambit that night to the place where the bullies hang out. Gambit gets a piece of copper pipe that's like a stand-in for the bow staff he'll use as an adult, and he beats the snot out of all the bullies. After the fight, though, more trouble. One of the dads, an Assassin's Guild guy named Salvatore, he finds out, wants revenge, brings some of his boys and a baseball bat. The Vig says, hey, Gambit, you get the hell out of here. The Vig fights off the bad guys, but we find out later that the Vig murders them all to death. Gambit runs off to an interesting place, though. Why don't you tell us about where Gambit goes off to hide when he's in trouble with the Assassin's Guild?
That's a good question. Why don't you tell me about that? I don't remember this.
Because
point.
my
Why
mouth's
is it
full of tea, Ruben. That's why I don't tell you about it. He goes to Haven House, where he sees a much younger Marcus St. Jr.
I did not even understand that.
Yeah. So
my reading comprehension is not always the highest.
Oh, well, at least your job doesn't entail reading complex documents and understanding them, so that's all right.
Yeah. Nobody hires me for that.
No, absolutely not. So, yeah, he goes off, and he's heard that this is a place where you can go when you need to hide, when you need some help. What do you say? So he meets this guy, and Marcus says, come on in, son. All who are lost are welcome here. And he gets put to work, and he gets to be there for a while. So, yeah, this is the start of the relationship between Gambit and Marcus. Presumably some stuff has happened in between, but it's kind of cool to see how they met. Gambit does get to return home after things have kind of died down. We never find out what his adoptive dad thought of all of this. We can't really do too much because that history is already set in stone, as much as Marvel history can be set in stone. But there's a cost. Maybe I'll ask you. I'll ask you this. You get this one. What is the cost that Gambit has to pay for being saved from these assassins?
Some percentage of his earnings.
25% of every dime he ever makes is supposed to be given to the Vig.
Yeah. This is one of the situations where I was just like, how much money do these X-Men have?
As much as they need. It's like Batman, as much as they need for the story.
I would have expected to see some sort of influence. And now that he's not paying this money, like, does that mean they're going to be upgrading that Haven House?
Well, I guess he probably stopped during Krakoa because he's off on an island. How's the Vig going to get me?
Yeah.
And we find out later that the Vig set all this up, even told those bullies to go mess with Gambit in the first place. So this is clearly a scheme he's done before, which explains his name. The Vig is gambling slang, short for the Vigorish, which means like some extra money you have to pay your bookie to set up the bet. Or it can be an extra fee owed to a loan shark. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's where his name comes from. So clearly this is a scheme he runs a lot. So he must have a lot of people kicking back a little bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
End of the flashback, back to current day. This is who's calling on Gambit to, pay his back fees. So the Vig still wants his 25%. And what he says he wants now is to settle all the debt stuff. He doesn't want like an accounting and tax forms. All he wants is one of those 4 kids now who have been hanging out at Haven House with Gambit. One of the outliers.
Which one would you get rid of?
Oh, boy. Whoever is annoying me the most lately. But I thought this is a weird call.
I think it'd be Deathstream. I'd be done with Deathstream. Yeah, he's pretty obnoxious at this point.
He's kind of... the things he says is kind of funny. I don't know. Jitter's kind of fun. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Horse Girl is kind of getting on my nerves lately. Just the way she's gone. She's gone from I hate mutants, I'm not a mutant, to hooray, mutants are the best. That bugs me. But she's even wearing a shirt to that effect in this issue. She seems kind of simple-minded.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is an attempt to tie the Vig in with current plot lines, kind of raise the stakes. I didn't think it was that necessary. It comes and goes in the blink of an eye because obviously Gambit says, I'm not going to do that. We get a fight. The Vig is older, but he's still big and strong, basically Killer Croc. But Gambit's not a kid anymore either. He uses his pickpocket skills to put a whole deck of Gambitized playing cards into the Vig's inner jacket pocket. Deck explodes, and the Vig is quickly down for the count. And for good measure, Gambit tells him that Salvatore's kid is coming after him. Salvatore being the dad, one of the people that the Vig murdered all those years ago. So the Vig better get the heck out of Dodge. Gambit heads back to Haven House. There's a big party. He teaches the outliers how to eat crayfish. And the end. Decent enough story. What did you think of this general story? Just this issue as an issue.
The story was good, but I didn't really understand the point of it. I guess it was just to create some space between the event and whatever the next arc is. But I'm not a huge fan of these, like, oh, this really important character who you've never heard of has like always been influencing your life. That part kind of bugged me. If the Vig was somebody we knew about, I'd be like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, we're finally resolving that issue. But it seems like this would have been something really hanging over him, and we would have had mention of this in the past, and I just don't remember any sort of story where he's like, oh, there's somebody that's trying to collect a debt and I have to pay them.
I'm going to paint this the way I explain that is that I'm going to say Gambit stopped paying him a long time ago, like when he left New Orleans. So you think
it's just an issue because
he's back locally?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that he's hung out in Louisiana a long time. So I'm going to say that once he kind of hooked up with the X-Men and was doing X-Men stuff and going all over the world, he stopped paying the loan shark or, this gangster. And now that he's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right that this is put here for timing reasons. What is... Oh, my God. What?
Who is this important person in the soccer world?
I have no idea.
You've piqued my interest.
Hey, Google, stop. That's at 109. Let me write that down because we're editing that piece of crap out. 109. I got to remember to turn that off. Now, what in the hell was I even saying? Oh, I think you're right, Ruben, that this is here for timing reasons. I think it'll probably finish off a trade paperback, something like that, because the next at least 3 issues of Uncanny are a new arc that spotlights the outliers again. Maybe going to answer some questions about them, how they got together, how they wound up in Louisiana, all those things. So maybe we'll find out that. But I thought this was a fun story. I enjoyed all the Louisiana local color and dialect. You're welcome, everybody, for not trying to do the New Orleans accent for all these characters. I think it's written pretty well, but I'm not going to try it. Solid art, and I don't mind having a different artist when we're doing a flashback to a different time. I think the different look works for this kind of a book. The Vig was a cool character. Not the most original character design ever, but he does look quite menacing. And all you need is a big, strong guy for it to be someone who would intimidate a little kid like Gambit was at the time. So I'm going to be positive here. I think this was a perfectly good standalone story that ties in enough with current day to make me say it's worthwhile reading. I'm going to give it a 7.8 out of 10. Much, much higher than the X-Manhunt Omega issue. How about you?
Yeah, I'll just give it a 7. I think it was fine, but I don't know. It's not like if maybe you'd be like, hey, you want to read a great Gambit issue, go read this. But I just wasn't that. I thought it was okay, but it was weird seeing Killer Croc in an X-Men book.
I think I got a little extra kick from all the Louisiana stuff. Even just the crawfish and the accents and the different groups of people. I thought that was kind of fun to see. So for me, that was a little extra bonus.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
Definitely better than the event ending, which is not what you want to say.
For sure. It's a not as a big deal. It's not as important, but just a better constructed comic book. Okay, those are the books we were here to talk about today. Next week, we got some more stuff coming up because these books, they don't stop, Ruben. They just keep on coming. Next week, we have X-Men number 14, which it looks like we're getting back to talking about that one little kid who thought she was a mutant, but then wasn't a mutant, but then maybe kind of is a mutant. We're going to get back to her. It's also Psylocke number 6, starting a new arc. We haven't loved that book. New arc, we'll give it a shot. Maybe give it like 5 minutes if it's not that great. But we get Helverine number 5, ending that arc, which we should maybe get some clarity on what Mephisto thinks he's up to. Also next week is Ultimate X-Men 14, which I expect I'll be talking about with Jim on the other podcast. Oh, and next week is also Concert of Champions, Ruben, which I know you said you wanted to do your own solo review of that one, right? I'll leave that entirely to you.
Hopefully there's some songs. Is there Dazzler in there?
That is the follow-up to the critically acclaimed Dazzler. Yes, the same writer at least. I'm not sure if it's the same artist.
Well, maybe we could get some more high-quality original tracks, right?
Could be. It couldn't hurt. Couldn't be any worse than the first ones. Okay, so that's next week's actual books. Certainly X-Men 14, and then we'll talk about something else, I'm sure. Yeah. Recommended reading. I actually have 2 things this week, loyal listeners. One's a comic, and one is something different. The first one, the comic, it's a comic I haven't actually read yet, so hey, if it turns out it's not so great, don't blame me. I'm going to try to check it out this week, and that comic is the 1999 Gambit series, written by Fabian Nicieza, and I think that's probably the series that's going to give the context for what's going on in this week's Uncanny, all the Louisiana childhood stuff. And my non-comic recommended reading is Jeffrey Thorne's Patreon. It's called Thorne Identity, like Bourne Identity, but Thorne. Pretty good name. You can read it for free, so you don't need to subscribe or anything. He just posts some cool stuff there. And lately he posted some pitches he made to Marvel and DC. For instance, there was a Lois Lane pitch there that is just wild. You got to check that out. He also posts like annotations and notes of his own books after they go to press. So like, for instance, after the last X-Force X-Manhunt tie-in, he talked about what that issue was going to be before it turned out to be a tie-in, about what his plans for X-Force would have been if it hadn't been canceled. So yeah, cool behind-the-scenes stuff like that. If that sounds like fun, just Google Jeff Thorne Patreon Thorne Identity. It's fun stuff. And you know, folks, while you're at Patreon, you're there anyway. Why not sign up for the Weird Science Comic Patreon? Access to the Slack, all these extra podcasts. Jim has been super busy lately. You know, let him know you're enjoying it. Sign up for the Patreon. And now, Ruben, now that I'm done plugging the Patreon, what can our own fine patrons and not patrons do until our next exciting episode drops?
Read more X-Men comics.
Get ready, everyone, and you just might survive. Ruben and Jason are here with their X-Men deep dive.
It's like an exhaustive deep dive.
Books is their mission,
It's
so
like
get ready for the learned edition. Things are getting weird in here. Ruben hopes another sword book gets announced this year. It's the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of
It
X.
rhymes with
Guaranteed.
X-Men.
It's the Weird
It
Dose
rhymes
of
with
X, guaranteed not to blow. Accept your mind. It's the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men